is this how I'm talking to a prospect? Is this how I'm presenting, what I do? So that's what really pushed me into I don't care what sort of traction this thing gets. If I continue doing this, I will get better as a presenter, as a communicator, as someone
Mhm.
who advises people on coverage.
All right, welcome into another episode of Connected Conversations in Insurance. My name is Ray Huang. I am happy to be here, and I'm happy to bring in a special guest today, Matt Layson. He's an insurance advisor and operations manager at Calrose Insurance up in Washington State. I first stumbled upon him on TikTok. Here comes Matt, and he's talking about really interesting insurance topics. Me being a social media guy, I followed him and realized he's also a Canopy Connect user. And then we got to talking. We met at the Hawksoft user group conference about a year and a half ago. And, I've been wanting to do this for a bit now and pick your brain a little bit. And I said, why not share this with our millions and millions of listeners? I wish millions and millions, but
Soon to be millions
soon
of
to be,
listeners.
soon to be. But Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And it's kind of funny. I remember when you mentioned this back when we were chatting at the conference, and then I thought about it like a month or two later. I was like, huh. It's like, oh, nothing ever happened to that. Huh, oh, well, that's fine. And so it was kind of funny to see your email the other day. I was like, oh, shoot, cool. Like, yeah, we can still do this. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So I always like to start off kind of learning about your origin story. How did you come up through the ranks, become an insurance agent, and then ultimately getting into what you're doing now with doing everything and TikTok and all that stuff?
Yeah, so my origin story isn't too unique in the insurance industry space at all. I'm actually a fourth generation insurance agent. I always like to show this. This is my great grandfather's business card.
Wow.
And so, yeah, my great grandfather, great uncles, they started an agency back in the 60s, if I remember right. My dad will correct me on that later. They grew it. My father joined up with it. And at its height, it was one of the largest independent insurance agencies on the west side of Washington. So I grew up around the Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner table hearing about liability and insurance and all that, and it bored me to tears. Of course, after high school, I was like, okay, that's great for all y'all. I'm gonna go do something else. And I've been a professional musician off and on since I was 19, and so got a degree in audio engineering and music, and had an audiovisual career. And kind of what's interesting for my dad is that half of the partners wanted to retire the exact same year, which does not work in a medium-sized organization. And so he took out a small, non-standard chunk of that agency. Was not what he wanted to do at all, not the kind of work he was doing by any means. But he was like, no, I want to do this on my own. And so he was building that, and I had my audiovisual career. And basically, I saw way too many guys in their late 50s, early 60s lifting thousands of pounds of gear in the back of a truck at 2 a.m. in the rain. I don't want that to be me, especially seeing all the flexibility and the life that it offered, that insurance offered so much of my family. So as I was working, I took about a year of just introspection, trying to decide what I wanted to shift to. My dad said, hey, there's an opportunity here. And that was almost 7 years ago now.
Nice. So tell me a little bit more about the agency itself. You said you kind of spun it off of or broke it off of the older OG agency. How
Yeah.
many folks do you guys have there? What kind of lines do you
Yeah,
sell?
we've got 9 people. We are purely focused on property and casualty, even though both me and my father and several of us have the license for life and health. We decided when we were doing a tiny bit of that, but we realized that the agency just wasn't geared for that. We really wanted to have someone that kind of like took that and drove it home, and we just didn't have that person. So we've been laser focused on auto, home, and business insurance. And because it started from a non-standard agency, there was a lot of work going from that to more standard and preferred lines, because that's who the kind of people that we want to work with. And honestly, that's what our carrier mix makes way more sense. So that's been a little bit of an evolution. And then in the last couple of years, it's been a big push on commercial, getting into more complex, more the phrase is one step off of Main Street. So manufacturing, professional services, stuff like that, because what we want to do, and this is something that I very much so remember the old school insurance agent that was a little bit more of an advisor, not just a used car salesman trying to close, 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 close,
Mm-hmm.
but someone that helped people understand how to protect themselves, their businesses. So even though that's not the reputation insurance agents have these days, I really want to bring that back. So that's why I like more complex stuff. And we really push education with our people very hard. We pay for it, we make time for it. In my one on ones with the team, that's one of the things that we talk about is like, all right, what next designation are you chasing? What can we support you in doing? So that's kind of how the agency has morphed over time and where we're headed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love that insurance advisor putting some
That's a good way
professionalism
to
back in
phrase
the
it.
profession, I guess. Yeah, because there is that reputation of salesiness, and I'm like, yeah, like the role is typically sales or agent, but it should be advisor, whether that's risk advisor, insurance advisor, but being able to actually be that consultative person, right? Similar to like a financial advisor. They're treated in a
Yeah.
very different way than, a typical salesperson. I don't want to knock on car salesmen either. It's just a different thing. It's a transaction
Hmm.
versus, I think, a relationship. So I think that's really important distinction. So that sounds like that's a bridge into why you started making videos like these, right?
Yeah, the reason why I started doing video content, it's kind of morphed over time. The original reason, as I mentioned, my previous career was in music and audiovisual. So that's all of my connections, all of my friends, everyone knew me as music guitar guy. And that was everything. So one of the biggest things that I knew I had to do in changing careers is I basically had to do a personal rebrand and also a little bit of an internal shift of who I am and what I focus on. I was talking with a marketing friend of mine that I had met, and I was like, okay, what are some advice? What are some things that I could or should do? And because he knew a little bit about my background, he said, well, you really should try video because you're not scared of a camera. I'm like, yeah, I've been in front of on stages, playing, singing in front of cameras, behind cameras. I've done video. Like, I'm not scared of that at all. Sure, great. So then I started just recording some stuff on Instagram. And yes, if you go back to the very beginning of my Instagram, whew, it is rough. It is brutal. And that's actually what kept me going is
Yeah.
I've always thought of myself as an intelligent person that is an effective communicator. But what was crazy to me, even with all of my experience, I looked back at what I had just created and what I had just said, and I was like, that sucks. I need to be way better at this because I knew I
Yeah.
was capable of it. And also, I was like, is this how I'm talking to a prospect? Is this how I'm presenting what I do. So that's what really pushed me into I don't care what if I continue doing this, I will get better as a presenter, as a communicator, as someone
Hmm.
who advises people on coverage. Because when you know that the average reading level is about sixth grade in the United States, and then insurance companies are like we write policies in plain English, and I'm like, you think that's plain English to a lawyer, a career contract lawyer? It is plain English, but to sixth grade reading level, that's
Right.
nowhere. And that's my job is to bridge that gap. And so that's why I started making videos and stuck with it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I like that idea of I think when you start you watch yourself on recorded meetings and things like that and you watch it back and you're like, "Oh, right? No one some people really like hearing their own voice,
I've
but
actually been in the studio with a bunch of people that never heard themselves before, and pretty much everyone says, "Oh, I sound like that." Yeah,
yeah. And it's funny because it does enlighten you to like, oh, that's how I talk. I know I ramble, I start sentences, then I go off somewhere else, then I come back, and it's hard to follow my line of thinking. I'm trying to listen to myself back. It's difficult, and people don't realize it until the cameras or the microphones kind of in your face and you listen to it back. So kudos to you to recognizing that and even knowing like, hey, I'm capable of being on stage and presenting and being a good communicator, still seeing it and be like, it's not that good.
yep.
We could do a lot better. So, and I've realized that too, doing more of these podcasts and having done webinars and speaking gigs and things like that. It's I was like, oh, all those filler words, like those are terrible. Especially with the technology now, when we get the live transcription, it flags all of your ums, uhs, and likes. I'm like, that's a lot.
Hmm?
My our producer, our editor, Elizabeth's gonna go through this and be like, yeah, you're still doing it in this podcast. And also turning things into plain English, which is critical because there's so much stuff that we don't understand. As
No.
we as the lay non-insurance person, I would say even the actual insurance people probably don't really understand a lot of this stuff either.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's a comment that I've gotten from more than one person that I randomly see at conferences, and like, it's not like I'm any sort of TikTok famous. People love to throw that at me. I'm like, dude, like, no. If you see an actual follower count of a real TikTok creator, like, let's be real. There's a huge difference between us. I'm small fry by every measure. The thing that surprised me a couple of times, you mentioned insurance agents, is I've had insurance agents come up to me and say, I've been in the industry for, X number of years, 10, 15 years, and I have learned so much from you. And in my head, I'm like, yes, I do have a little bit of an unfair advantage. I grew up around this stuff a ton, but like I said, I've only been doing this for 7 years. And if how I'm presenting things and talking about coverage is teaching insurance agents that are a decade my senior, man, like one that shows that there's a little bit of a education gap in the insurance industry that shoot we need to fix. But the other thing, it shows that I'm actually doing something useful, not just for the consumer, not just for marketing, but also for the insurance agent.
Certainly, certainly. Was there in you started on Instagram, and I know you're on TikTok and you're on other channels. I know for a lot of creators and a lot of people that do anything on social media is like, I'm going to go post more on LinkedIn. I'm going to go record more videos. I'm going to do these things. And it lasts for a week, a month, 6 months, and it tapers off. Was there something in you or something that you saw that said, oh, I'm seeing the positive signals of doing this and I should keep on doing it? Or are there moments where and maybe I haven't scrolled back far enough where there's, 6 months of dead time?
No, there's never been 6 months of dead time since I started. A couple of weeks of dead time, sure. That's happened a few times. There was a few things. Like one, when I was jumping into the insurance industry and trying to reinvent myself to a certain degree, not really change my personality, just kind of change my focus.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a lot of Gary Vee, and that was one of the things that he was talking about is like, be brutally consistent, just keep going. And I'm like, and I have a little bit of bitter determination about me, and so I'm like, okay, I can roll with that, cool. And the other thing was seeing my communication with my prospects, with my clients, with other agents in the office. I was getting better, and then I was seeing the videos. I'm getting better at this. So I was like, okay, that's the value add for me personally. Like, because for probably a good, and this will really discourage a lot of insurance agents right off the bat from ever doing this, but like I said, I've got some bitter determination in me that I just don't care if I set my mind to it. And I didn't get a single drop of business for a good year. The value add for me is me improving my communication. That's going to help me close business other ways.
Yeah,
But I was very aware because I grew up around the independent insurance agency space. One of the biggest problems is awareness. The customer, the consumer, they don't know you exist. They know State Farm, they know Allstate, they know the huge brands because there's
sure.
billions of dollars dumped into that to make that happen. Rose, you don't know that we're here if I'm not doing everything I can to bring some attention to the agency and the brand. Then no one's gonna know, no one's gonna try, no one's even gonna think to give us a chance. That was one of the things that, and when I was describing this to my dad, basically kind of justifying my time of like, hey, I'm doing this and this is good. He was like, well, it's not generating business, but he's like, you do have something there because back in the old Whitfield days, that was the insurance agency that he was previously a part of. He's like, I will never forget the day that we spent thousands and thousands on marketing locally, and we really felt like we had an established brand. Once again, multiple generations of insurance agents, and they were one of the largest, and they went a block away from their office with 70 agents in it and asked someone, hey, oh, I'm with Whitfields, and like, who, what?
Right.
And so that was kind of, it reinforced that whole point of, if you're an independent agent that doesn't have one of those humongous brands behind you, you need to be doing everything you can to get your name out there just to get an opportunity.
Yep. So walk us a little bit through your process. I'm sure it's evolved tremendously, but you're a former AV, I guess maybe current AV guy. You know and have all the tech and knowledge to produce beautiful videos. Walk us through your process for coming up with the content itself, which, we've got tons of sources for that. But then how do you actually put together some of these videos?
Yeah. This is something that I've told real estate agents, loan officers, insurance agents that ask me, and all of them are surprised at my answer because, as we were speaking before we got rolling, Ray, that yeah, my degree is in audio engineering and music. I currently release music that is at a professional level. My goal is to basically make my really budget gear in my garage by myself to compete with a $10,000 record. And it can, and I know that. And that's a level of audio quality I'm capable of. When it comes to video, I have experience with multi-camera systems, being operator or video switching them. I have experience with LED walls, with projection. I've set up 3 laser projectors, stitching them together on a curved wall. So when I tell you that I have the capability of making this thing insanely complex and insanely pretty, absolutely I do. You know what I actually do? I record in the app. I point it at my face. Most of the time, I don't even have an external mic, and I hit post. The reason why is because I'm busy. When I mentioned my job as operations manager, for those of you who've been a part of family agencies, and I know it's a lot of people out there, you know what that means when you work for your family. It means I'm involved in everything. I'm designing the marketing at all places and deciding what we're putting our spend on. I'm managing the IT. I do the one-on-ones with our employees to make sure they're doing things correctly. I'm selling my own, making sure I'm selling policies. I'm doing all of that. I cannot afford the time to be messing around with, oh, the gain structure in this one part is off. I think the compressor's hitting a little too hard. I should limit this at this dB level so that way it exports out. It doesn't matter because if you just look at the kind of users and the kind of social media content creators that come up and do well, it's so simple and straightforward and basic. So why you need to do more? This is not the 90s. This is not where you need, a pretty camera system. You can compete with 90s television just right here. And so don't make it complicated. Make it as simple and as easy and as efficient as you possibly can because you've got a lot of other stuff to do. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, and you asked about the content, right?
Yeah,
I moved right.
that's okay.
That's another thing. I keep so stupid simple because once again, I'm busy. So what do? What's a weird thing that happens in my day? Something that confused one of my clients or prospects or someone else's in the office. And then I will take that story, pluck it out, and then I will turn insurance into English. That's where half of my content comes from. But sometimes there's, nothing happens in the day that's, sparks that or that I'm like, oh, this would be good. So what's the other thing I do? I go to the insurance journal. They're good journalists over there. They unpack some very interesting stuff. So I can pull from there. And basically between those two things, you can kind of hear that it's like, oh, Matt's not really planning this out. No, because I don't need to. Because between the content that other people create that I can riff off of, and occasionally I'll see something on social media, I'm like, oh, I should react to that. Some of my followers DM me stuff and say, hey, this is interesting. You should look at that. And I do some of those from time to time. But between all those different sources, I don't really need to plan stuff out. All I just have to keep in the back of my mind is I cannot let a whole week go by without me posting a video. Most of the time, if my schedule is relatively under control and it's not going too crazy, I'm posting 3 videos roughly a week, and that keeps me on top of mind to some degree. And then I will repurpose those, whether that be going out to the YouTube channel because I think this is more commercially accessible because it lasts a little bit longer on YouTube. And then we tie those into blog posts and use AI to make a blog that's all around that video content. The content itself comes from interesting things or weird things that confuse people or confuse insurance agents or some of the things that you just don't expect. One of my most, actually, that's not one, it's by far the most viral video is me just talking about State Farm's loss ratios. Whoever would thought that the average consumer would have any interest in that concept at all? But yeah, 1.6 million views later, when it comes to content, I don't obsess over it. I'm like, do I find this relatively interesting, and can I make sure that this is interesting for the average person? Record, post, move.
You know, do you script out or bullet point out what you want to talk about well ahead of time? Do you rehearse, or do you just go, oh, that's interesting, and you kind of live?
Yeah, basically the latter. I kind of live because I can think and talk on my feet a bit. Sometimes that bites me in the butt, make no mistake. Sometimes I spend too much time on a video just trying to get the verbiage right.
Yeah.
But some of that's not scripting out, and sometimes I do bullet point out some stuff or script some stuff out when I'm like, this is so complex that if I don't nail this down, no one's gonna care. Is gonna
Yeah.
be interested in this. I do pay a bit more attention to how I'm delivering it because let's be real, insurance is boring, boring as hell, and it's my job to make it interesting and engaging for the average consumer to do a few things. One, get the thought in their head that maybe there's some things about insurance that I don't understand. Two, oh, this guy does understand it. Because that gets, if those two things happen, that is much more likely to get me to point number three, like, well, maybe I should have that guy look at my stuff, that I should have that
Sure.
team work on what I have.
Yeah. What kind of feedback are you getting? You had mentioned earlier that you didn't see any direct business come out of it for the first year. How long have you been recording and doing these videos?
5 years now or so?
5 years. Okay, that's a good amount of time.
I've got a bitter determination about me.
Yeah. So you didn't get much immediately sort of like attributable traction on it the first year. At what point did people start coming to you and saying, I found you on Instagram or TikTok? I saw this video of you and I had this issue and
Yeah, that took about 2-ish years before that started to happen, and it happened in weird ways. A loan officer that's now a client of mine, I've worked on his family stuff. He sent me a bunch of business. He just liked the fact that I was doing it, and he was like, "You're actually trying to educate people and trying to grow. Cool, let's work together." And that was one of the first signs of success. When it first started to generate business, I got a referral from an individual who'd never worked with me. And the way that she described me in the email introduction to the prospect, you would think I was the god of insurance. It was wild. But that was the thing, is I'm like, you've never worked with me. You don't know what I do. You just know what I post. And so that was another thing. I was like, okay, if that's what's happening in my local business community, then okay, then once again, that's a great way to create referral sources from people that have never worked with you. And that was like, that's pretty powerful in and of itself. And then when it really started to be more of like, okay, more of what insurance agents would chase with this kind of thing is like, okay, when is it going to start closing me business? When am I going to start getting deck pages? That took a while.
sure.
There was just one video on TikTok. It didn't go really viral by any means. I think it got a few 100,000 views, but it did well. And all it was a gentleman who was here in Washington asking, why in the world is my bill going up so much? I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I can speak directly to that because I knew some information about that specific company. The next 3 weeks after that, there was a lot of stuff coming through Canopy Connect, a ton of stuff, because it was kind of a, for lack of a better phrase, a lightning strike. I reacted to something that a lot of people were experiencing and thinking of, and then lots of people wanted us to work on stuff.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So it's social media. Not everyone is a positive cheerleader on social media. How do you handle some of the inevitable negative comments, trolls? I'm sure even that, very well articulated reasons why your rates are going up. There's going to be someone else that says, that's not the reason your rates are going up.
Because insurance agents are making 80% commission.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
To see that, I just seethe with anger. But yeah, so I have a couple of rules. When I was younger, I grew up in a family that liked to discuss and debate, so I
Mhm.
got pretty good at it. And it's very rare when I can't put someone into their place within about 5 minutes. So I have that intensity about me, and that's what I want to bring to those kinds of troll comments. what I learned, I had to kind of take a step back from some of the things because, my most common comment is insurance is a scam. That is the
Sure.
most
Oh,
common. I've had people ask me, how do I sleep at night? Guess what? That means I'm more likely to show up to them and all their friends a lot more if I'm feeling a little bit salty. Other times I just don't respond if I just don't have the interest or energy to be a little salty because they still are helping me. They're
yeah.
still improving my engagement. But there are some others. There are some other people that, depending on how they word things or how they ask things, I that I'm like, okay, I think there's actually a real question in here. I think there's an actual
Mhm.
real concern, and I try to interact with those people and engage and educate. But also, there's times that I make mistakes because it's just a little bit of text on a comment thread, and if I'm not having a great day, I will interpret it in the most vitriolic way possible, and I've fired back some pretty vicious comments to people, and they're like, I was actually kind of agreeing with you. And I had to slow down. And I've had to say sorry a few times, but when you're quick with your tongue, you have to get comfortable with saying sorry, I apologize, and I didn't understand what you meant because
Yeah. One last question, perhaps, for the agents and people out there listening. They're terrified of being on camera. And what's some of your advice to kind of get past that initial fear, and take a step forward towards this?
yeah, so think of it like cold call reluctance. Is that, yeah, you're going to get some people that they are really upset that you picked up the phone and they don't like the sound of your voice or you caught them at the worst time. That's going to happen. It's kind of the same thing with video, is that you're going to say something and people are going to hate on you for it. I mean, shoot, I think it was a video that I posted, was it, I think about a month ago, and I knew that the topic that I was going over, which was litigation financing, is not a really good thing, and why it's actually beating up a lot of insurance companies and basically creating this whole, you know, private equity way to harvest money from insurance companies and damage everyone's rates. But I knew just because of the topic and how it was going to go down that a lot of people were going to be angry. A lot of people were. A lot of not fun comments. Whatever. You get used to that over time. So first, you will get a little bit more numb to it and realize that the internet is practically a fake place. But the other thing is that it's some of the reasons why people have reluctance about doing video is because they realize they're not good at it. And people don't like doing things that they're not good at, especially when you expect to be good. When you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a good insurance agent and I am so good at explaining coverage. And then you turn that camera on, you press record, and you're like, you sound like a moron. That hurts your ego. And
Yeah.
you have to find a way to get past that and understand that that's going to happen. That's okay. And the last one is don't view this like pay-per-click advertising. A lot of insurance agents are like, what's the ROI? What's the ROI? I'm like, yes, that's a great question as a business owner, and you need to be asking that all the time. But ROI is not just dollars. Like I said, I got better at communicating. I got better at explaining coverage simply and quickly. And those were some real returns on that investment.
Hmm.
And I did things to make sure it didn't take a lot of time. So and also don't make it some fancy beautiful production like you need, a DSLR that has to be like this, that you have to get a Rhodes, mic and point it like this. No, don't do that. Just grab the phone, grab the camera, just start. And then if you really, it becomes like a big part of your business, like I think of like David Carruthers. You see how he started and
Hmm.
where, yeah, now everything looks beautiful and great, but he's like built a whole business model around it and it's been an evolution. That's how it should be. When you're just trying and learning, you don't make it so complex and don't expect immediate success because let's be real, when you first started writing insurance as an insurance agent, you probably made some really stupid mistakes. You probably
Right.
explained some people said this is covered and it wasn't. So keep the expectations low, don't make it too fancy, and leave your ego at the door.
Yeah. Amazing. Matt, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you on all your many channels?
Yeah, our YouTube channel, we've been posting there a bit more often, is just Cal Rose Insurance. You'll find us on YouTube. And then same thing with Instagram and Facebook, Cal Rose Insurance. The website's Cal Rose INS. Now, me personally, I also do my own individual stuff. Um, and that is just my name, Matt Layson. And you search my name, it should pop up. And whether that be TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm the most active on TikTok and Instagram just because that's where I get more feedback and more response. I'll
Mhm.
do some things on LinkedIn from time to time, but those are the places that people can find me.
Gotcha. And we'll make sure to put that stuff in the show notes or description down here so you can follow him.
There are a couple of agents that do troll me, and there's one in particular. I still can't tell if he actually likes me and likes my content or if he doesn't. But he always comments, and I'm like, okay, sure not.
Yeah, you're like, is he actually trolling me or is he like ribbing me because we're like fellow agents?
I think it's the latter. Sometimes I'm not sure.
Yeah, funny. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really
Yeah, thanks for
appreciate
having me.
it. Hopefully, you serve as an inspiration for folks to get out there, do it. Just do it to become better communicators, let alone doing it for your business or just to share information and be educational and bringing some extra value to your customers. So, thanks so much, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks.